Chairman, I've been asked to elaborate on the topic biodiversity and agriculture. I submit to you that the theme for today ought to be biodiversity is Guyana's future. Use of the conjunction and has no place in the context of biodiversity and Guyana's future. When we think about agriculture in the context of global affairs, biodiversity is the underpinning of agriculture. Guyana is known as the second greenest country on planet Earth. When we apply the metric used by Global Footprint Network, that is by capacity, it shows that Guyana has about 40 times the global average of biocapacity, meaning the capacity of nature itself to renew the goods and services that are important to humankind. When we look at the demand on that biocapacity, it is very low in Guyana compared to other countries. As a matter of fact, when we look at the member states of the Caribbean community, it's only Guyana, Suriname, and the Bahamas that have more of nature left to support human development. All the other countries are in deficit. They are biodiversity deficit nations. The Guyana, Suriname, and the Bahamas, and Guyana in particular, is a biodiversity reserve country. And that is important because the basis of agriculture is biodiversity. When we look at the pillars of our agriculture, they are non-native: sugar and rice. And the institutions of the state that are there to develop these two industries that are important to our agricultural GDP, they utilize biodiversity not produced here but elsewhere. And there are 43 or so different varieties of sugarcane that are in our gene bank. 12 of them are used in production, the last estimate. There are about 43 parental lines of rice that we have in our gene bank. About 4 of them have reached the commercial stage of production. But they are not dependent on our local biodiversity. EPA reports, and I think the 5th National Report to the Convention of Biological Diversity, that we have somewhere around 13,000 different species of plants and animals, but 8,000 of those are plants. How much of that we actually use to support agriculture in Guyana? It's very small, very small. As a matter of fact, when we look at the so-called non-traditional, there are about 70 of them that are used and 30 of them commercial. In livestock, we have about 12 different species of livestock and about 26 breeds of those different livestock. But there's an important group that is not accounted for, and that's social biodiversity. Our human cultures, languages, intellectual property generated over thousands of years. That's not accounted for, and it ought to be accounted for. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to illustrate the importance of our native biodiversity by citing one example: cassava. The center of origin of cassava is South America. It was introduced to Asia and Africa by Portuguese colonists hundreds of years ago. When we learn about agriculture at school, they teach us only about Manihot esculenta, which is the sweet cassava. We've learned nothing, and through all the years I spent in universities, nothing about Manihot utilissima, the bitter cassava. Yet, we have in a collection at the World Tropical Gene Bank in Cali, Colombia, but 7,000 land races of cassava. A lot of those sourced from Guyana. In our own gene pool kept in ex situ collections, we have about 87 different accessions of cassava. But why is cassava important? Why am I using that example? It is important because when you're dealing with native genetic material to support agriculture, the actual investment in producing it is low because it's already adapted to the environment. Cassava grows pretty much any ecosystem, all types of soil. It grows with little or no inputs. As a matter of fact, it is almost non-responsive to fertilizers. It is resistant to pests, and it has a physiological pathway that allows it to do that. It allows it to utilize very small amounts of water. So it can exist as well and can produce in droughty soils. And that is the C4 physiological pathway, which allows for the concentrating of CO2 in a different organelle of the cell. In that way, it suppresses what we call in the known crop physiology to be photorespiration. And these are the features that make the cassava so important. A few years ago, I think 4 years ago, the FAO had an important conference at Cave Hill in Barbados on just cassava. Recognizing that it's so important to the people of the region, where our food import bill is approaching $5 billion. Cassava alone can account for about 10% of the cost of producing food in the region and meet the high calorific needs that is a characteristic of the food that we import from outside of the region. There are things that we need to do to ensure that we are projecting our native germplasm in support of agriculture, in support of food. Number one, we have to call on the authorities to implement the Seeds Act 2011, which allows for the protection of our genetic material. It's been too long since that act has been passed. Number two, we need to apply a multidisciplinary approach to our agriculture, particularly with respect to the use of genetic resources. And by that I mean we have to deploy our anthropologists, we have to deploy our agroecologists, our soil scientists, our plant breeders, our agronomists. Here is when, Mr. Chairman, I have an issue with my oral acuity. We have to, our social scientists, we have to ensure that this multidisciplinary approach is going to allow us to harvest the rich potential that is present in our native gene pool. This conversation is becoming more important as we head to Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt for the 14th Conference of Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity. One of the key topics in discussion will be digital sequence information. Ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching the era of synthetic biology. Even before we have learned to appreciate the natural gifts and the natural characteristics present in our own genetic material. We have to move quickly. We have to accelerate the pace at which we are embracing technology. And we have to ensure that when we hear about digital sequence imaging and gene drives, these are not foreign languages. It is time that we start considering placing at all our embassies all over the world, and I've said this before, an army, not of soldiers, an army of science diplomats. Our most important resource is our human resource. And without that, will not be able to take advantage of the rich biodiversity we have as part of our national patrimony. We will be unable to take advantage of the wide genetic material covered in all of the germplasm that we have sitting out there in our forests, in our savannas, in our water bodies, in many different environments that we've become familiar with, and not just in our hinterland, but in all 4 natural regions of Guyana. I'd like to close, Mr. Chairman, by indicating that the teaching of agriculture needs to take center place. Agriculture is no longer the preserve of those who did not make the top grade. The best and brightest must also be attracted to agriculture. It means those of us who are responsible for the administration of agriculture in Guyana must ensure that it gets first-class treatment. Not tomorrow. It must begin today. Thank you very much.